Well, I don't think... There's no question Betancourt is the initial aggressor. He puts his hand on his waist. But we see that every single corner in every single game. But then Dan Burns starts forcing Betancourt backwards. Betancourt's starting to lose his balance. Dan Burns got his arm locked in. And Dan Burns, twice the size of Betancourt, and he's forcing him down, and he ends up on top of Betancourt. Now, I don't see as a referee you can turn around and say, that's definitely a penalty kick. I just don't see it.
How did you see it, Don?
Exactly the same as Stevie. It's never a penalty. It's never, ever, ever a penalty. That's two players more or less wrestling for the same bit of territory. Who was at fault? I don't think you can split them. I think it's a 50-50 who's trying to sort of wrestle away a yard. I just think it's one of those where whoever hits the floor, the referee then thinks, oh, that must be a foul to the player that's hit the floor. I think that was a poor decision from the referee. He didn't actually have a good game, the referee, all evening. He's a young referee, so it was a tough game for him to try and ref in, so I'll give him that. But I think the VAR decision for the pen was extremely harsh.
What's your overall take on today's result between these two sides and how it all ended, though, Don?
Well, Spurs come out with a bit of credit, Kay, because they got battered for 45 minutes, and that's, I think, where Eddie Howe will be upset that Newcastle didn't go at least 1 or 2-0 up at half-time. Hand on heart, I think Eddie got his team wrong. I think he should have started with Anthony Gordon and Anthony Elanga. He went with Murphy and Barnes, who, to be fair, are in good form. I just think the way Spurs line up with Udogie and Porra at right back, you can get at them with raw pace, and that's exactly what happened when Anthony Gordon and Elanga came on. So I think Eddie Howe will be a little bit sort of self-reflecting when he thinks, could have done a little bit more? I think he could have. Romero, he'll never score a couple of worldy goals like that, even though, as Ali said, it was an absolute shin to win the last one, but a diving header and an overhead kick to get a point. So credit Spurs for not caving in, but Newcastle will be a little bit devastated. They didn't put them away in the first half.
And not all heroes wear capes, Ali.
Well, no, and Christian Romero does not have a cape. I honestly, because we're watching a lot of games at the same time, and every time that I pan to the Newcastle Spurs game, especially in the first half, I'm thinking, good Lord, these are two bad teams. Bad teams. And Newcastle slightly better than Spurs, and yes, should have been up at halftime, but just on the whole, what I'm most surprised about is that actually there were 4 goals produced in this game. Where did 4 goals come from? Because on the basis of the performance, you look at both of them, and they belong exactly where they are on the table. This is not a coincidence. And that's the overall feeling that I got in watching the game, is that, yeah, they are what they are for a reason. Spurs struggles to create anything of any sort of significance in the attack, so much so that you have to lean on Christian Romero to be the one that scores 2 goals for you somehow. As for Newcastle, you get the feeling that they should be better, that they could be better, but for whatever reason, they just can't quite string it together game after game after game. In fact, half to half. Their drop-off in performance within games is significant, so much so that you allow a very average team like Spurs, to get back into this match. Newcastle should have won this game. They would be disappointed, but just on the whole, both of these teams, they got a whole lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do, Stevie.
Yeah, I think, Newcastle definitely let themselves down in the final third with the amount of ball they had. Ali's talking about looking at the game. Every time you watch this, the yellow jerseys were defending. But you've got to give them credit for that. Particularly, Frank's under pressure. And of course, whenever a manager's under pressure, the old classic comes out. Oh, the player's playing for the manager, they're putting it in. Well, in terms of performance today, were they at the silky best? 100% not. But I'll tell you what, they didn't have to put the effort in. Yes, they had to defend for their lives, but they did it. And you don't do that if you want rid of the manager. And the fact that when they went 1-0 down, we all thought, game's done here. Because this team couldn't even get out the park, never mind score a goal. But they came back, they didn't let their heads go down. They came back into the game. And Newcastle took a step back, naturally. But they got back in it. And then again, they get punched in the jaw again. 2-1 down, game's done. No, it's not. So I think we've got to give Spurs some credit. They didn't deserve to get anything from the game, but they kept at it. And if anybody had any doubts that this team wants Frank as their manager, this effort showed that they still believe in him.